which are rather easy to understand.
Absolutely. I mean, if you buy a high quality business which is simple to understand and with a great return on capital employed, which is consistent, it is backed by a management whose wisdom, sagacity, intellect and ethics you trust, that such a business is a large addressable opportunity so that it will have a sustainable, long-term, predictable earnings growth. That earnings growth need not be some 30 and 35 and 40%. Even a reasonable 15% to 20% kind of a sustainable earnings growth rate is good enough to create that foundation and to give a superb long-term value. And finally, you buy that package at as optimal a discount to its fundamental worth as you can, and then stick to it rather than trying to judge it at every single quarterly result or every single piece of news that you keep hearing, including from television.
Let's talk about your study. You've just commissioned a very strong study on what are the true virtues of long-term investing. What is your study throwing up?
Well, I think some of the aspects I already mentioned, that the pivots for value creation are simple. It is we who try to make it complicated. The pivots are...
Let's break it step by step.
The pivots fundamentally are 5. One is a large size of opportunity, that is a foundation for value creation, which is akin to saying that you are looking at a large size of fish, or you are looking at a large size of a pond. To my mind, markets are usually more engaged in trying to judge the size of fish rather than the size of the pond. And it is most important to judge first the size of the pond. Opportunity is to be large. Thereafter, if the fish has the due characteristics, capability, endurance, it will grow to be large. If it is large, it will get larger, and if it is not so large, it still will get large with a favorable pond size and favorable conditions and capability. So size of opportunity is a very fundamental attribute of a good long-term investing, because size of opportunity gives you compounding power.
Okay, before we move to the second point, give me an example of where size of opportunity is very large to your mind. Then we'll move to point 2.
You look at most of the consumer businesses, the size of opportunity is giant. I mean, this is a country of 1.2 billion people with a rising income, with a rising purchasing power. Hopefully it will continue to do so for several decades ahead. Many of the consumption needs are still unmet, even of a relatively preliminary nature of consumption. So there's a huge period of growth. We may try to conjecture every quarter and every half year sometimes, but it is really not essential, because the long-term opportunity is so outstanding that it is important to remain glued to that. So that is a huge size of opportunity. And if you have picked out the good areas within that, because there is large variety of consumption, you have plenty to ride on. Similarly, pharmaceuticals, it is a huge long-term opportunity in the global markets. It is a fantastic opportunity in our domestic market for the similar reasons that I articulated for consumer businesses. Growing healthcare concern, growing income, recognition of the fact that healthcare is an important aspect of life, and all of that spells a large opportunity in domestic market as well as international market, where the innovative multinationals are fatigued with their overbearing research budgets and their ability to manufacture has been squashed. So Indians have a tremendous opportunity in that area. Huge opportunity, fundamentally a sound business, and any good business can hope to grow at a meaningful 15 to 20%, if not higher, for a very long period of time.
What are the other pivots? Because you are making a case that it is important to focus on return on equity, but along with return on equity, growth also has to be strong.
Absolutely, which is what my book is talking about, that basically return on capital employed provides the sail to ship. It provides a backbone, because without return on capital employed, you cannot create value. In other words, if the two essential pivots are the healthy return on capital employed, or in other words, a high quality of business, and a decent sustainable, predictable, long-term earnings growth. If you have very high earnings growth rate but a very poor capital efficiency or a poor return on capital employed, that is a recipe for decimation. If you have a very unhealthy return on capital employed as well as a poor growth, obviously that scenario is not even worth talking about.
With that logic, commodities will never create wealth?
Well, commodities will not give you a compounding opportunity, that is for sure, and that comes out very clearly. Unless a commodity business is into a space which is with a set of fortuitous circumstances where the relative price volatility is decimated, where they are price maker rather than price taker, and basically they have their destiny under control. For example, cement is one industry where, despite it being in a commodity space, it is insulated from imports, and to that extent it has a much better opportunity. The business fundamentally is such where all the good players have costs under control and they've got a good pricing power given the demand supply dynamics, and all the quality players enjoy exceptional balance sheet with zero debt, and they enjoy very healthy return on capital employed, which means if the, as I mentioned, return on capital employed provides a sail to ship, the growth in earnings will provide it, is X like a wind, and it will provide it a direction. So you need return on capital employed to provide a backbone for value creation, and coupled with that, a growth in earnings will actually provide it a direction and a momentum. So the two together will create a healthy value.
So what has worked in the past, do you think it will work in the future as well? Because you're making it sound very simple.
It is simple. Like Buffett has said, investing is simple, but it is not easy. It is indeed simple. The basic principles, we may want to attribute to us some profound knowledge and all of that as investors, because that will do a lot of boosting to our ego. But investing is simple. There is nothing so difficult that we need some special genius or special very high level of intellect to be able to do a good job there. What we need is a reasonable intellect, but more than just the intellect, bigger role is that of wisdom and discipline. I think wisdom and discipline probably has even a little bit higher role to play in long-term value creation out of a good investing than just the pure intellect. So you need a combination of reasonable intellect with an exceptional or healthy wisdom and discipline. That is a fantastic combination. So principle is simple. Principles have been simple for 300 years of investing.
Application is tough.
It is the application and staying the course, resisting the market temptations, both of a positive or a negative variety, not falling prey to the greed and fear or the hubris, not getting tempted to evaluate, quote unquote, every piece of news that you hear, whether it is some sound bites about Greece or America or Europe, or some worry about some macro number here and there, and constantly trying to judge. This is what destroys good compounding.
So just buy a good stock, buy a good quality business, stick to it. That will create wealth.
Stick to it and buy them at a reasonable price. You don't have to buy it at an exceptional bargain to create value. Even if you buy them at a reasonable price, and even with a reasonable earnings growth rate, the outcomes are fantastic. You don't have to drive a car at a very fast pace to reach destination either early or well. You just have to drive it well in order to reach probably both early as well as, in any case, in a good condition.
Between the tortoise and the rabbit, eventually it's the tortoise which wins.
Well, I'm not trying to make a parallel of that. I'm not saying that you have to be slow, but I'm merely saying that if you have a steady, reasonable growth in earnings, let's say even a 15% steady long-term compounding of earnings growth coupled with a high quality, in other words a high return on capital employed, and addressing a large opportunity, such a business will create a fantastic value. You can see in the as the book examines, there are so many businesses which are simple, straightforward, in consumer space, in pharma space, in many other businesses, where these businesses have compounded and compounded relentlessly, irrespective of variety of events that have happened over a period of time, at a decent 15 to 20%, but have produced an extraordinary market returns of 20 to 25, in some cases even 30, and in some cases even higher than 30% compounded per annum. You look at some of the outstanding finance firms which have created a company like Gru Finance, for example, is compounded investment returns at an incredible pace of about 40% plus over a 10-year period. These
Can
are
they do it in
investment
future
returns.
as well? That is a question mark.
Well, that which company will still continue to do in the future is something that you have to use the principles, find out which companies still befit the description, and will continue to do so. But the principles remain sacrosanct. Principles are durable. So the book talks about the principles, that these are the principles which create value, and if you remain true to them and identify businesses which befit these principles and will continue to honor them, are the businesses which will create value. So principles, first step is to identify and isolate and internalize those principles. Second step is to use those principles and apply oneself to find out which companies which will match with this description. And then third and very important step is to buy them at a reasonable price and stay them the course rather than disturbing them time and again. So there are plenty of businesses in variety of areas where healthy combination of, simple combination of good return on capital employed, long-term earnings growth, good return on equity, good management, and staying the course has produced extraordinary compounding of 25% plus per annum for years and years and decades. There are plenty of businesses of this kind which very clearly it brings about.
Have access to your book, but some of our viewers may not have access to your book. What they would be curious to understand from you is that which are three companies which have constantly featured as wealth creators. This is not a recommendation which I'm seeking for you. What I'm trying to understand from you that which are three companies which have a very strong and a robust business model.
Well, you are putting me in a little bit of awkward situation because I prefer not to talk about any individual business in a public medium.
I'm talking about your study.
Well, if you look at in the consumer space, there are plenty of names which are getting thrown about, which have created a fantastic value. You look at a name like Asian Paints, which is not exactly consumer direct consumption item, an indirect consumption item, but a very, very successful business, fantastic value creation. A company like ITC, a company like Nestle, a company like SmithKline Consumer, now Glaxo Healthcare, Glaxo Consumer Care. Then there is a Marico, then there is a Pidilite. There are plenty of sound, solid, good compounding businesses. If a company like Dabur, I mean, they have grown not at some extraordinary earnings growth rate. Typically, most of these companies have done between 15 to 25, more often than not between 15 to 20% earnings growth. But the returns that they have created over a period of time are indeed extraordinary. You look at in the consumer space, but a little bit more durable, a firm like TTK Prestige has created again an outstanding kind of a compounding, again based on the same idea. Very healthy return on capital employed, very little need for incremental capital, so very little dilution of capital at any point of time. A decent, rather than more than decent earnings growth rate, typically upwards of 25% over 10 years and higher, and management which has been very sound and well regarded. It is a recipe for extraordinary value creation. In pharmaceutical, if you look at firms like Sun Pharma, firms like Divi's, firms like Lupin have done extraordinarily well. Again, the same combination. Balance sheet which is not diluted, business which has grown, addressing a large opportunity, very healthy return on capital employed, sound business model, sound managements, and fantastic value creation. You look at in finance space, whether you look at HDFC Bank, you look at Gru Finance, a firm like in recent cases Relatedly, if you see even the firms like Axis Bank and Yash Bank, many of the, or Shriram Transport, many businesses have created extraordinary value.
And they have one thing in common, which is that they have good quality business where growth and return on equity is strong.
In automobile, you look at firms like Bajaj Auto, firms like Hero Motor, even auto ancillary, a firm like Myco, Bosch. I mean, there are plenty of businesses in each area. I mean,
stick to the principles, that's the bottom line.
And you remain with discipline.
But just a last follow-up question, and then we'll wrap after that. What about timing the market?
I think it's a popular pastime, but highly destructive. For good investing outcomes and for good investment results, timing I don't think is essential, and it is not even a proven either science or art. So I would say more important is sticking to the principles and having that time on your side. And there is a very interesting aspect which has been analyzed in the book about that, where what we have done is there is a rolling 5-year cycle over last 12 years. So say for example 2001 to 2005, 2002 to 2006, etc., etc. So there are 7 or 8 5-year rolling cycles. Then so you're not taking any particular cycle bias, whether it is positive or down or upbeat or otherwise. All kinds of cycles are covered over last 12 years. Then I'm saying that, okay, in any cycle, only 2 conditions, that you buy in the first year of the 5-year cycle and you sell in the last year of the 5-year cycle. So any point of the first year you buy, and any point of the last or the 5th year you sell, which means you buy in the first and sell in the 5th year and remain in between. And then I put a very tough condition in one of the tables there, which is saying that buy at the highest price of the first year, which means I'm buying at the most unfavorable price. Then I'm selling at the most unfavorable price in the last year, which is at the highest price of the lowest price of the 5th year. Now with that condition, normally you would expect results not to be very good, because if you're buying at the highest, selling at the lowest, and holding in between for those on that 5-year duration, normally results shouldn't be very healthy. But it is highlighting that there are champions which have not posted a single period of a negative return in any 5-year cycle out of the 8 5-year cycles, even with this tough condition. Not only that, there are champions with this kind of a tough condition, they produce a compounded returns minimum of double-digit with this kind of condition.
Really appreciate your time, lovely study.
Thank you.
And glad you could join us today.
Yes, sir.
That's it on this edition of Market Makers. I'm Nikunj Dalmia signing off. Thank you for watching the show.